take where he was at in life and his capabilities and help the world. And my mother, she was another brilliant person. My mother and father grew up on farms. They were farm people, they were good people. They were not associated with the system at all, nor have any of my relatives, except for one of my dad's cousins in World War II, because he was a genius, worked on the Manhattan Project. But my father has basically been a technocrat for these people that run the world, and he tried to make a career out of going to third world countries and developing their agriculture. And so I got to see some of the movers and shakers of the world, and I also got to see how the people, as David Adair called them, you know, these bureaucrats, how they treated the technocrats that worked underneath them. My father was sent by the U.S. State Department aid program to Nepal when I was a child to develop the Nepalese agriculture. And he painstakingly typed up a big, massive report of their state of affairs all over the country, which he traveled on by foot and by jeep, and when he and a plan to improve their agriculture, and they had lost it within 2 weeks, and that was back before there were photocopy machines. So I saw how saw time and time again how the people that are running this world just played around with people like my father, who sincerely wanted to improve this world. This planet. Not growing up in this country and not coming to continental United States until I was 11, have an outsider's view of this country and what's going on. And you know, when you're in a situation, if you can step aside and look at it from a distance, you see it differently. And so there's a lot of things that I see about this country that maybe other people can't, because I have been in 33 countries and I've been a world traveler, and I see things from a different perspective. Plus, when I was in Nepal, we didn't have television. I spent a lot of my idle time reading Encyclopedia Britannica, and I went to a private school that when I came to the United States, I was 2 years ahead of the kids in public school. So that gives you a little bit of background of why, having been a truth seeker who's devoured books every day and have interviewed countless numbers of people and done all kinds of research, that gives you a little bit of background as why I'm up here telling you some of these things rather than somebody else. What I've seen at this conference so far, there's been a lot of things that pertained to my research on mind control. Our Japanese speaker last night, he talked about blood pressure in the head and how he went out to find out. It was so frustrating for me this last week. I tried repeatedly to get a chance to tell him why he didn't find any information on that when he went out there looking in the medical books. Because see, I have been spending time researching mind control and what these people are doing. And there's a cerebral spinal fluid, as well as the brain, the blood pressure in the brain, and a lot of other things that he's not aware of that have been suppressed by these people. This is information that they have suppressed, and the reason why is because there's only a few men in the world that know these things, and they're using it to enhance their programming abilities, their mind control programming abilities. So there's a flip side to this. Some of the things that I'm going to tell you about today are horrendous, but the flip side of it is that some of the things that the New World Order and the Illuminati know, if they were put to good use, would be fantastic. I have repeatedly seen that these people are giving us the crumbs of technology and information. In fact, they go to, there's a conference, Bill Gothard seminars, where they teach spiritual principles for Christians. Their programmers go to these conferences. Their programmers, their mind control programmers, know how a person can make themselves into a great spiritual being they know this far better than most of the Christians, but they use this information for evil. They're able to take and set in things within the life of a person to prevent them from becoming the person that they could have. So there is a good positive flip side to this, but if you saw what I've seen, it would make you angry that these people are taking what could be used for the elevation of mankind and they're using it to enslave us. Now, as I go through this, I'm going to touch on a whole variety of things because, like Dean was telling me, he says, my audience knows a lot about the Illuminati. The thing of it is that the information, the level of information that I'm putting out about the Illuminati, unless you've been in touch with my information, you haven't heard it before, because that's a much deeper level than what the people are telling you. So I need to just touch on some things so you see the type of information that you can get, and this all pertains to the mind control. So we're going to run through real quickly here some overheads. Around this date, Admiral Stansfield Turner, who was head of the CIA, went before a congressional subcommittee, and he admitted to them that yes, the CIA is carrying out mind control on countless numbers of unwitting American victims. And he even went so far as to say the basic methods that they use in this mind control: hypnosis, drugs, and torture. And around this period of time that he was addressing the congressional subcommittee, why the New York Times had this article. Here they mention a couple names of these are mind control programmers. Dr. Ewan Cameron and Dr. Louis Jolyon West. They were two examples of mind control programmers. If we go back in history, you'll see that our governments are just carrying out methods of control that were written about long ago. And those of you who have been associated with the Army realize that they have a lot of pamphlets and books for their people. This was a handbook for chaplains, and inside this handbook for chaplains, they tell all of the religious groups that are recognized by the U.S. military, and one of those groups that's officially recognized is the Church of Satan, so that if you are a satanic priest in the Church of Satan, you are exempt from the draft because you're a clergyman. And Anton LaVey happens to be one of the mind control programmers that I have been exposing, and you'll see a picture of one of his slaves in here. In this book, in this handbook for chaplains, they will tell you that there are 3 degrees within witchcraft, and that is correct. Those first 3 degrees make up the anarchy level of the Illuminati, and then you have a hierarchy level within the Illuminati. Last summer I went out on speaking circuit of 14 major U.S. cities, and there was a tape made, a professionally made tape in a television studio where I explain charts like this, explain a lot. So I strongly recommend that you get that videotape because it gives an excellent overview of a lot of things. But for instance, you'll have this diagram explained, and I go into the top 13 Illuminati bloodlines in that tape. I also have a book. This comes from a book, The Top 13 Illuminati Bloodlines. This pertains to the mind control because these bloodlines learned about these mind control techniques many centuries ago. These are the movers and shakers of the world. And for instance, the Rothschilds, their secret genealogy traces back and this is inside information. You're not going to learn this reading a book. This is inside information. Their genealogies go back to Nimrod. So these are some very powerful bloodlines, and they have learned a lot of techniques for controlling long ago. And when you learn who the bloodlines are, it totally changes your view of history. Now, for instance, Grant and my co-author back there, Cisco, who I brought out of the Illuminati, her father was a programmer, and parts of her were used for programming. Her great uncle, her dad's uncle, was the head of the U.S. military during the Vietnam War, General Earl Grant Wheeler, and he was a descendant from Hiram Ulysses Grant, and Ulysses Grant was of the Collins bloodline and of the Delano family bloodline. Two very powerful bloodlines, and you may have thought that he was just a common ordinary person. To understand what's going on, you really need to understand these bloodlines, and that's why I encourage you to get the book that we have back there, the Volume 1 book, the Top 13 Illuminati Bloodlines. These are just some representatives of those bloodlines. And these are Illuminati members that I'm showing you here that are representatives of the different bloodlines. And the DuPonts, for instance, have been in charge of a large portion of the military-industrial complex. They have produced the gunpowder for all of our wars. So every war that we've had, they've gotten incredibly rich. They also are into a lot of the chemicals. Every day you use chemicals that came out of DuPont factories. The Freeman family and Gaylord Freeman, head of the Priory of Zion, and this is the Kennedys. Here we see JFK at the Great Pyramid. It seems like a lot of these Illuminati types have made a pilgrimage to the Great Pyramid. And here's Anton LaVey. See if I can get him up a little bit so that the camera can see a little bit. This is Anton LaVey with one of the members of his church, Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was part of Rat Pack, which were working with the intelligence agencies and were Satanists. And one of his slaves, James Mansfield, is there kneeling down before Anton LaVey in a satanic ritual. And here was the first presidential model sexual slave that they allowed the public to see. This is Marilyn Monroe. She was, both James Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe had sexual relations with John F. Kennedy. And here I believe that you can see her switching personalities. When I start talking to you more about how the mind control is done, you'll understand what I mean by switching personalities, because they create programmed multiples where they get a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde effect. And here's this is Winthrop, who's said to have the largest porn collection in the world. And the mind control slavery relates to the porn, the type of porn that they do too. This is Guy de Rothschild, very powerful man. His bloodline will have the Antichrist, and that's his son, David. And here's of the Russell family, and represents the Russell family. And here you see Bill Clinton. This is a hypnotic induction for a mind-controlled slave. It hypnotically inducts them. And then you have William Huntington Russell and Samuel Russell, which tie back into your slave trade. So see, these people, these Illuminati families have been involved in slavery for a long time.